So you're just misreading what this is suggesting.
There's no way. Yeah, you're completely out to lunch.
They haven't used Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to keep anyone off a ballot. When's the last time they've done it?
When's the last time someone engaged in insurrection?
According to your definition, thousands of times.
Okay, well, we can go through one if you want and see if it meets all the criteria.
We will. So we're still going through. We're still going through your definition. So when it says
we're never going to. I don't think we're going to agree on it. If you're trying to make the argument that coercion and compelling of a group of people by force, that you think that anybody historically meant that to mean protesters, we're not going to agree on the words of any of those. I don't even think you truly. I don't think you even think that's true. You're going to be like a ridiculous.
That's not true whatsoever. In fact, we could go and they say, for example, it can be compelling by force to just have large numbers. Some of the authors
when you're gathered there for the purpose of engaging in intimidation. Yes.
No. It says that large numbers themselves are intimidating. So you agree?
No. Wait. Show me.
Wait. You disagree with that?
Yes. I don't think that they would. I don't think that that's what they consider intimidation.
So just to be clear, if I could find an example, I just want to be clear. If I could find an example from these court cases that you say there's historical that says that engage groups of large people that outnumber police that are there protesting itself, those large numbers, even without weapons, could be an act of intimidation, then you'd be willing to concede that this would mean thousands upon thousands of things have been insurrections in this country. You concede that?
I just want to point out a difference. Number one, that when I allowed you to give me your ahistorical, not researched, and totally unfounded definition of insurrection, at no point was I ever trying to trap you by saying, if you agree to this one thing, you realize everything's wrong. I said over and over again, you can amend your definition, we can go back and change things. I'm just trying to figure out a thing, okay? Just number one. So I just want to point out the different standard of treatment here. Number one. Number two, you also played a very funny weasel there where you amended your speech in the middle of, if I could find an example where protesters gathered could be seen as intimidation. That's my definition. You can't throw that at me and pretend to fight against me with my own definition. Because I agree with that. A large amount of protesters could be amounting to intimidation. But I'm pretty sure for it to count as intimidation in any sort of sense of like the furtherance of a crime or something like that, you probably need some intent aspect there, or at least some action that they're engaging in. I don't think just having 10,000 people protesting in an area necessarily counts as intimidation in like a violent sense. I don't believe that's the case. But if you can show me an example right now if you want, and we can go through it, and maybe I'll say, oh, well, maybe this changes my mind then. So if you want, give me an example.
Okay, well, look, I thought I read this in a court case previously, so we'll see if I can find this here. But I just want to be clear, if the case says that large numbers of people themselves can be intimidating, you keep conflating words there. You're saying like intimidation to use violence. That's not what's necessary.
You're saying like intimidating, like what, like spooky or scary? I don't know what that means when you say intimidating.
That's your definition. Your definition says it doesn't need to be force. It could just be intimidation. Correct?
Intimidation of force, meaning a bunch of people can show up who are very rowdy. They might have weapons on them, right? They might be saying things like, we're going to kill you, hang Mike Pence. They're not necessarily engaging in violence, but the intimidation sure is there. Yeah, of course. Just a bunch of people showing up to protest.
This is from the amicus brief. We'll get to point. We haven't finished with point 2 yet. We'll get to point 4 from your author Graber, right? This is what he says. Point 4. Through the use of violence.
Wait. Okay, wait. What page is this?
Oh, shit. Again, I don't.
No, wait. That's fine. Okay.
Okay,
you said through the use of violence. Wait, what's the quote?
I don't know what paper this is from. It's. I think it's from the amicus on the Coy Griffin case, but it says through the use of violence, force, or intimidation by numbers.
Through the use of violence.
1622 TR 226 1 through 5. So this is from Graber's testimony on 8/16/22. Transcript, page 26, lines 1 through 5. Graber, from the very court trial that you've got this definition from. Graber's the person who created this definition in the Coy Griffin trial. Let me read again what he says here. Ready? Through the use.
Can you paste me real quick what you're reading to so I can see it, read it along?
Yes. And again, this was sent to me by your cohort, Pisco.
Okay.
As what he was using, which I assume he helped you with. So
nope. To be clear, Pisco did not help me with this. Well, okay, I read through this amicus brief on my own, and I read through all of Baud and Paulson's paper on my own, and I read through a couple of these court cases on my own. Pisco has like linked me things to look up, but Pisco did not help me in the preparation for anything. I did all of my prep on stream. I read this whole thing on stream. Everybody watched me do it on stream. Just
okay, I'm being a little tongue in cheek. Pisco's never helped anyone, so we get that. You know.
Damn.
Did that shit send to you before? Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Let me open this. So I can read.
Now, can I read, just so I can read to the audience, section 4, we're not here yet, but just so we, 4, through the use of violence, force, or intimidation by numbers. Not, you said, oh, it means intimidation of violence. No. It specifically says intimidation by numbers. Which the clear implication here is what he's saying is if 1 million people show up and they're protesting the law, the fact that there are so many people that overwhelm the...
Rob, what do you think intimidation means?
It could mean, it means, let me think of, without looking up what I would say intimidation means. It means...
What do you think it means to intimidate?
To scare someone through your presence.
Yeah, and how are you scary through your presence? Is if they think what's going to happen?
But it could be a lot of things.
Probably violence.
Not necessarily, but it does, let's say that is the case. Let's say I concede that. And it's not that they have to think violence will occur. They could think that if violence did occur, this group is so intimidating. And we know that they are, quote, levying war if they're intimidating and they are trying to get a law changed. Trying to challenge the executive on something. So if a mob of 1 million people show up at a 1 million man march and they're saying things like no justice, no peace, and they want significant changes to the way laws are applied, that would by its very nature be intimidation by numbers, which is exactly
okay, here,
what
I'm curious. Do you want to read through the Graber case where it brings up intimidation? We can see what they're talking about.
Yeah. Read that again.
Sure, I'll read this whole paragraph. Mr. Rawl then proceeded, under the direction of the court, to state the law. The treason whereof the prisoner was charged was, quote, levying war against the United States, end quote. When he asked, was levying war against the, what he asked was levying war against the United States, he conceived himself authorized upon good authority to say levying war did not only consist in open, manifest, and avowed rebellion against the government with the design of overthrowing the Constitution, but it may consist in assembling together in numbers and by actual force or by terror, opposing any particular law or laws. Again, there can be no distinction as to the kind or nature of the law or the particular object for which the law was passed, since all are alike the acts of the legislature who is sent by the people at large to express their will. Force need not be used to manifest the spirit of the rebellion, nor is it necessary that the attempts should have been successful to constitute the crime. The endeavor by intimidation to do the act, whether it be accomplished or not, amounts to treason, provided that the object of those concerned in the transaction is of a general nature and not applied to a special or private purpose. In order to effect the object of those embarked in crimes of this high nature, it is well known that various means are necessarily employed. Various acts may be perpetrated to accomplish the main end. They may proceed by the execution of some enormous crimes, as burglary, arson, robbery, or murder, either or all of them. But even if one of those crimes were committed, one or all of those crimes were committed, except the purpose should be of a general nature, they may form distinct and heinous offenses, but the perpetrators may not be guilty of treason. A particular friend of the party should have been in custody of the marshal. Okay.
Okay.
So this is basically saying that, by
it says
the endeavor,
force
by
isn't
intimidation.
necessary, and it talks specifically about a collection of numbers, correct?
Yes. To.
Now I'm looking at this. Go to page 10. Here's the top quote. As he stated.
Wait.
Sure. Page 10.
Page 10 at the top. Okay.
As he stated before, Mr. Rawls said levying war in the United States against the United States was a crime defined by the Constitution in relation to the Republican form of government existing among
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I can't find where you're at. Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said page 10?
Yes. Maybe I'm looking at something.
No, I'm sorry. No, wait. You're right in the middle. No, go. You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Levying war in the United States against the United States was a crime defined by the Constitution in relation to the Republican form of government existing among us now. It can only consist in an opposition of the will of society, which we're all members, declared and established by a majority. In short, an opposition to the acts of Congress, in whole or in part, as to prevent their execution, either by collecting numbers, by a display of force, or by exhibiting that degree of intimidation which should operate in either way upon those charged with the execution of law, either in the United States or any part thereof. This is saying specifically, notice the term or there, either by collecting numbers, by a display of force, or by exhibiting a degree of intimidation which should operate. So this is Rawls clearly saying that a collection of numbers is enough to generate the term levying of war.
Okay. Let's assume, for sake of the argument, let's say that, let's just ask ourselves this question. Do you think that at this time in the United States of America, do you think that these people are talking about if any number of people gathered to protest a law, that counts as levying war against the United States?
Yes,
you think
that is what it seems. That is as broad as what they're suggesting. Now let's go to page.
Okay, I can't. Okay, wait. In that case, we can't. We're at an impasse. We'll never agree because you don't exist inside of any kind of like historical understanding or inside of like any kind of legislative or judicial understanding of the history of the United States. You're like on an alternative history for the U.S.
It's what I think they're saying. What I think they're saying, as is quite evidenced, is that they're talking specifically about things such as like Civil War, such as the Whiskey Rebellion, such as governors being overthrown in a massacre of 150 black people by radical white supremacists in the state of whatever state that was, Tennessee or whatever.
Or by like resisting the peaceful transfer or execution of like the electoral vote. Yeah.
I just want to be clear. What we're doing here is going through the cases of the very definition that you've derived from. We're using your definition and the court cases, and we're going through the exact words that they're saying. The words that you're using to claim that January 6th was an insurrection, that people that support Donald Trump are fucking around and finding out if they happen to get shot.
You don't have to jump all the way to the end of this. I understand.
But what I'm saying is this is where you derive your definition from. So as soon
but you're not. The problem is you're reading this. You're like cutting. You're using dictionary definitions and then doing ChatGPT to try to cut out like your hyper-specific definitions instead of reading this as like a reasonably minded person who can contextualize the information can. Like if we read this case, if I read what you just said, as he stated before, Mr. Rawls said, levying war in the United States against the United States was a crime defined by the Constitution. In relation to the Republican form of government existing among us, it could only consist in an opposition to the will of the society of which we are all members, declared and established by a majority. In short, an opposition to the acts of Congress in whole or in part, so as to prevent their execution, either by collecting numbers, by a display of force, or by exhibiting that degree of intimidation which should operate in either way upon those charged with the execution of the law, either throughout the United States or in any part thereof, to procure a repeal or a suspension of the law by rendering it impracticable to carry such law or laws into effect in the place so opposing or in any other part. This offense he considered to be strictly treason against the United States. It is unfathomable to me that a reasonable human being with an understanding of the English language and any common parlance, any historical understanding of words, would read this and go, oh yeah, he meant that like protesters could definitely be this if there was enough of them. Absolutely
That is exactly what they're saying. We'll continue. Again, like I'm using the actual words from the court case that you're saying. In fact, when you bring up the insurrections, the first two insurrections that people say are Whiskey Rebellion, Fry's Rebellion. This is the court case that it came from. Let's go to page 14. All right, you there?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to start third sentence down. It is the opinion. Okay, this is going to be a little lengthy, so I'll try to be articulate. It is the opinion.
Okay, I can read it. It is the opinion of the court.
Wait. Why do you get to read it? You'll read it faster and glaze over shit. I have a more soothing voice. Let me read it. You ready?
Okay.
It is the opinion of the court that any insurrection or rising of any body of the people within the United States to attain or effect by force or violence any object of a great public nature or of a public and general concern is levying war against the United States within the contemplation and construction of the Constitution. On this general position, the court are of the opinion that any such insurrection or rising to resist or to prevent by force or violence the execution of any statute of the United States for levying or collecting taxes, duties, imposts, or excises, or for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, or for any other object of a general nature or a national concern, under any pretense, as the statute was unjust, burthensome, oppressive, or unconstitutional, is levying war against the United States within the contemplation and construction of the Constitution. The reason for this opinion is that an insurrection to resist or prevent by force the execution of any statute of the United States has a direct tendency to dissolve all the bands of society, to destroy all order and all laws, and also all security for the lives, liberties, and properties of the citizens of the United States. The court are of the opinion that military weapons, such as guns and swords mentioned in the indictment, are not necessary to make such insurrection or rising to an amount to levying war, because numbers may supply the want of military weapons, and other instruments may effect the intended mischief. The legal guilt of levying war may be incurred without the use of weapons or military array. The court are of the opinion that the assembling bodies of men armed and arrayed in a warlike manner for the purposes of only a private nature is not treason, although the judges or other peace officers should be insulted or resisted, or even great outrages committed to the persons or the property of our citizens. So this is saying specifically, you don't need weapons. Numbers alone may supply for the want of military weapons. So
Rob, are you serious?
Yes, I am serious. The court are of the opinion that military weapons are not necessary to make such an insurrection or rising to levying war, because numbers may supply the want of military weapons and other instruments may affect the intended mischief. The legal guilt of levying war may be incurred with...
Or I guess we're going to ignore the fact that literally the entirety of this is talking about engaging in a warlike manner, okay, is preventing by force or violence, over and over and over again is brought up, okay? We have, and in this part, the court are of the opinion that military weapons are not necessary to make such insurrection or rising amount to a levying of war, because numbers may supply the want of military weapons, and other instruments may effect the intended mischief. Is intended mischief here? Is that just protesting?
Yes, protesting and actual, because what they're saying...
How about, we can just read in the next sentence. What do they mean by intended mischief? The legal guilt of levying war may be incurred without the use of military weapons or military array. The court are of the opinion that the assembling bodies of men armed and arrayed in a warlike manner for purposes of a private nature is not treason. This is for purpose of a private nature, okay? None of this is talking about a simple protest.
No, what it's talking about is...
What it's talking about, it's funny, it's so, what are these, okay, I do agree with you, these people were fucking retarded. They're writing for people like you who would look at a group of people that are showing up clearly to like start shit and do an insurrection, and then somebody like Rob comes along and goes, well, actually, they didn't have any weapons, so it was safe. And the judge would look at you and go, well, obviously, these people are assembled in such a way that they're here to intimidate, threat of force. Even if they don't have a weapon on them, they're here to fight. But what they didn't preempt is you might be saying, oh, wait, so you're saying that all people that are assembled in large numbers that are protesting are now engaged in insurrection? It's such an unbelievable, like, I'll give you the kill shot to your question. Can you find me a single court case, even around this time in the entire history of the United States, where somebody was prosecuted for insurrection or treason for a peaceful protest? Did this ever happen ever? If this was truly their understanding at the time, that a large group of people, they're just protesting, but they could be insurrection. Was that ever a court case ever in the history of the entire United States, ever?
How could this be a response to what I'll say to you is, if you're right that things like that the definition that you're given, and we could see dozens upon dozens, probably thousands of examples in the past 100 years, and it's never been tried. What your argument to that is, just because they didn't bring court cases, this is what you said in the debate with Andrew, doesn't mean that that's not what they intended. Wasn't that your argument?
I said that just because you don't criminally charge somebody with a crime doesn't mean the thing itself actually happened. The thing itself happening, an insurrection happening, that actually has been determined. It's been determined by the Colorado Supreme Court. It was determined by a Mexican court. Or not a Mexican, New Mexican court, it was. And it was determined by the House and the Senate. They're not a legal body, but they made that political determination. So there's three very high bodies that have never been contradicted by any higher body of law that did determine that what happened on January 6th was an insurrection. So if you want to go that argument, I win by default.
So what this is saying is, it's saying specifically that any insurrection, what it's talking about is groups of people that gather that are pissed off about a law. They want to change something. This is levying war. They're real clear on what levying war is.
Why would you think, Rob?
Let me now listen. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. No. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to leave you continue to just yell over me. I'm not some fucking random bitch that you brought on. If you want to talk, fine. You have to let me talk. Right? What it's saying is, it's talking specifically about levying war, are people that are going against, using violence, intimidation, force, etc., execution of laws, or even specific individual laws. So, for example, on page 14, what we're reading here, any insurrection rising the body of the people within the United States to attain or affect by force, violence, or any object of great public nature, or of public and general national concern, is levying war against the United States, with the contemplation and construction. So what it's saying is, for example, a bunch of people that are pissed off about any law that you could think that would have existed back in this time, whether it be the end of slavery, whether it be taxation laws, any of these things. If a large group of people came, it was through intimidation or force, and were protesting one of these laws, that would be considered levying war against the United States. It then goes on to specifically say military weapons, etc., are not.
Let me say that again.
Let me finish.
I just want to, so I understood you. You're saying that any protest against a law of any of the state or federal government back then would have been considered levying war against the United States if there were enough people?
If there were enough people that showed up to an event to protest at that point, it seems to be what they're suggesting. Because it says...
Is there a single time of that ever being prosecuted or that ever being a thing?
Is there a single person that was prosecuted for insurrection on January 6th?
I already gave you examples of courts
didn't.
declaring this Colorado Supreme Court decided that an insurrection existed on January 6th. The House and the Senate decided that an insurrection existed on January 6th.
A yes, no will suffice. Was there a single person charged with insurrection?
No, but I've never made the claim there was.
Thank you. Okay, so then when you say, can you show me a person that's been charged with this? No, I can't because I don't have direct access to the entire library of the United States court decisions. So could there be a case that says that? Yes. I don't have it in front of me. What I do have in front of me, is the actual court cases that you've brought to bear from the guy who created your definition. What it's talking about is when numbers supply, you don't need military weapons. Because it could affect the intended...
Because the violent nature and intent of the crowd is clear. Yes.
No, again, violence isn't necessary. They're quite specific in all of this.
Because intimidation. Yeah, you don't have to engage in violence.
And they're saying that numbers alone can be intimidation.
They could be, yes.
Right.
If they're assembled in such a way that they're trying to prevent the execution of the law, that they're trying to, that they're assembled in a warlike manner. That's why the next sentence literally says, assembling bodies of men armed and arrayed in a warlike manner.
The next sentence, what you're reading, is differentiating public purpose versus private purpose, right? So it's saying even if, now it's giving the hardest case scenario. Even if
that's just saying what it would consider to be like a riot versus or a private thing versus what would be considered insurrection. But it's saying, but this is all applying to the same thing. The only differentiator isn't the assembled bodies of men; it's that it's of a private versus public nature. But every single thing you're reading in here is about violence. All of it is about
it is
violence.
not. And we already read specifically that it says violence isn't necessary. In fact, in the very amicus brief that we're reading, this reflected the common understanding that an insurrection need not rise to the level trying to overthrow the government or secede from resisting the government's authority to execute a single law sufficed. We have, like, all through what we were reading earlier, talked about how violence isn't necessary. It even said force wasn't necessary, right, is what it was saying earlier. And again, what you're doing here, this next sentence, what it's saying, it's like, okay, it's saying, okay, we're looking at what an insurrection could be. Well, it's the levying of war against the United States. And it could be people using weapons and shit, but it doesn't have to be that. It could just be people that are doing intimidating. And it doesn't have to be that they're armed. It could just be that by their very numbers, it should suggest a want for weapons. That, holy shit, there's so many. They're here. They're protesting this specific law right now at this location, right? And then it says, now let's go the opposite direction. Let's say that we have a private military, people armed that are private in a warlike manner, but it's for a private nature. No, that doesn't qualify as treason. That's what it's not saying these things are necessary, that you have to be arrayed in a warlike manner and have armed men in order for it to be an insurrection. They're saying even if they are military people armed, if they're there for a private purpose, that's still not an insurrection. So you're just misreading what this is suggesting.
There's no way. Yeah, you're completely out to lunch on that.
And again, I just want to make it clear.
Just to be clear, hold on. What you're asserting is that at this point in time in the history of the United States, it was illegal to have large protests against the federal government.
What I'm saying
that's what you're saying? No, don't do this. What I'm saying, blah, blah, blah. I'm asking you a very simple yes or no question. You can say no and then explain why. But I'm asking you very clearly. You're telling me that at this point in the 1800s, early 1800s of the United States government, that it was illegal, it would have been seen as treason to protest in large numbers against the federal government.
Yes, that's what your court cases that you're basing on what levying war against the United States.
No, not my court case. It's just saying that's what Chief Justice.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any evidence to the counter? So you're saying that this court case is erroneous?
Yes, of course. I got the First Amendment. Yeah, the Bill of Rights. Okay. I've got the entire history of the United States.
Explain that to me.
Ever been prosecuted like this ever? This has never happened. It is very obvious and plain in the plain reading of the language of this court case that nobody here is talking about just a group of men showing up and protesting a law. Obviously, in the context of this entire court case, It's about violently resisting or through threat of intimidation resisting a particular thing. And they're saying, yeah, if 1,000 people show up, even if they don't necessarily have guns or whatever, but if it's obvious that the intention of the crowd is for one through violence or intimidation, that this is and you can even show that through huge numbers, no sane human being is reading this unless you're the most partisan hack-fuck brain in the universe is trying to read this going, oh my God, this definition applies to every single protest against the federal government. But you already said that, yes, in Rob's world, Rob thinks that in the year 1800, large protests against the federal government were illegal in the United States of America.
You're spurging out, dude. I wonder why. Again, your amicus brief from Graber, who we're told is the standard legal definition, and he says, he makes it a point. This is his interpretation after reading several court cases, what he says. The use of violence, force, or intimidation by numbers. Then he cites Fry's. Then he cites the grand jury by the court in 1861, the charge of the grand jury in 1861, right? So he cites 3 cases, not just this. So we go to the first court case. It says exactly, again, this isn't my words. This is what he's implying. He says specifically intimidation by numbers. And he uses the word or. He doesn't say and. He says there could be violence, there could be force, or there could be intimidation by numbers. So in other words, if you are you're swearing in Justice Kavanaugh and tens of thousands of people show up, yes, that could be intimidation by numbers. They're all screaming. They're outraged. Absolutely, that could be considered intimidation by numbers. There were other cases, which I remember reading this. It's been a while since I debated this, but I remember this vaguely talking about the civil rights movement, where there were cases, I think, in abortion. Was one year we were talking about it, where they said that intimidation by numbers could include people outside of abortion clinics that were gathered in mass. That they included that as intimidation by numbers, even if they weren't shouting profanities, even if they weren't shouting threats. The mere fact that women are going into these abortion clinics and there's 50 people standing outside was considered intimidation by numbers. Several court cases, I believe, if I remember correctly, ruled that alone. They didn't have to have weapons. Most of them are holding signs that talk about God and stuff like that, and that was deemed intimidation by numbers. So when I'm using your definition,
we'll do this. Let me ask one more time. You think that in the year 1800, 1,000 people protesting against the law in the federal government was treason? Just to be clear, yes or no, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then also, can you link me that court case that you're talking about? We can go read that. Okay, I'm curious. I just want to see that. Yeah, the intimidation by numbers thing.
Dude. This is like having to go back to my debate files in like 2006. I will try to get that to you at some point. I don't but what I'm telling you is, right, what they were doing was they were looking at specific things. It was written, it's like how we write the code for like disorderly conduct. Like, I don't know what it's like where you're at, but I could bring up the code for disorderly conduct in Pennsylvania. One time I got arrested at this fucking concert, this metal show, and I got charged with drunken public and disorderly conduct. I ended up getting the charge dropped because the cop that was in the drunk tank with me and the chart, filed everything. He told me to fight it and I won. But I was like, I didn't commit disorderly conduct. He's like, yeah, you did. Look at the statute. And the statute in Pennsylvania, basically like disorderly conduct's like anyone who engages in activity that could be considered a nuisance or annoyance. And he's like, having an argument with your girlfriend a little too loud, disorderly conduct. Music playing a little too loud in your car, disorderly conduct. It's written that way intentionally as a catch-all. What I'm telling you is this was broadly interpreted, but was only used in the most severe of cases. So they were using it with things like the Whiskey Rebellion. They were using it with things like lynching or the murdering of 150 black men and the overthrowing of a governor. They're using it in the case of the Civil War. But yes, the excuse of how they're using it, and it's using the term levying war, was so broad that a reasonable reading of it would be if 1,000 people showed up at a state courthouse to protest some new tax, yes, that would be intimidation by numbers and could be charged. Now, they wouldn't have charged it, but they absolutely could have. And the fact that, and again, you keep saying, but show me the court case, show me the court case. This goes in line with what I'm saying. We're only on halfway through section 2, and already you can see how fucking ridiculously broad this could be applied. They chose not to apply it to more significant, obvious insurrections, things like the Chaz Zone, and the only time they decided to apply it was to Donald Trump and to politicians that were running for office, this Coy Griffin guy, one guy. That's it. That's the only time in over 100 years. That's the only fucking time that they've applied it. And it was one court case that got overruled in Colorado that said it was an insurrection. That's it.